Hello, hello. We're here again, another Friday afternoon, but this time I have the lovely pleasure of having Ken with us. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence, Ken, on another Dental HR Talk episode. And today, the reason why we brought Ken on is that, it's been a tough 8 months, 9 months, 2020, what have you. It's been full of ups and downs. It's definitely been a roller coaster ride. I know personally, for myself, it has been. And so we wanted to bring Ken on. He's a certified behavioral analyst, and he's here to talk about some suggestions about how we can improve our communication, which is then going to foster respect in relationships. And it's going to support everyone's mental health and well-being. And let's be honest, right now we all need it, don't we, Ken?
Oh, I think we've always needed it. We need it now probably more than ever.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we're going to need it ongoing because we're trying to address it to get over a hump, so to speak, or we're waiting for whatever is going to happen. But I think if we can help our clients start thinking a little bit differently, because times are different. So what you used to base some decisions on before, maybe that's not going to work anymore. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It is a bit of an evolution. So now you have a different sets of information that should help you confidently make different decisions. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is about the people you work with and the people you work for. So yes, communication is key, as you said. It helps foster respect. Good communication helps foster a safe environment, an environment where people feel free to communicate, where you can have a disagreement, but it's safe enough to have that conversation, as opposed to just put your head down and go. Because communication is connecting, and people need to connect. And that's one of the things we've found through this pandemic is we've lost that. Yes, we do Zooms and so on, but that personal connections. So communication is probably the easiest tool to use because you can talk to somebody.
Yep. Text everything, right? And like you were saying, I think the key point here is the connection part. And you and I have worked together for quite a few years, and we've both have worked together to be able to support practices and have gotten those 911 phone calls of when we have the extreme, worst case scenario, when there's a big disconnect that has come to the point where it's created a very toxic culture. We've had employees walk off the job. So there's a lot of things that, the work that you do to be able to really help practices communicate, reconnect, get back on the same page. So I know, we've had you on here to talk about this topic before, but we've got some new followers. We've got some new people here. So why don't we just catch everyone up about what you do exactly to help these practices?
Okay. So what I do is behavioral profiling. And as Samantha said, I am what is called a certified professional behavioral analyst, which means I can measure how people are going to behave using a tool called DISC. And DISC is an acronym. It stands for Dominance, Influence, Steadiness, and Compliance. And I'm not going to drill down on that today because some of you have probably done a DISC. One of the things I always find, a lot of people have done it, but they've never seen it. So they don't actually know what it measures. Somebody asked them to do it. So what we're trying to find, often we get those 911 calls, what's broken down, communication, why aren't they listening to me anymore? I told them what to do, they didn't do it, and now they're on the ledge, people are walking out and so on. So the whole premise of a profile is to help you understand. Firstly, understand yourself. And I know, Samantha, we did your profile, so we can talk about that in a bit. But if I understand myself and my behavior, it can lead to what are my wants and needs. And then we can figure out how do you then engage with the people you're working with so they get their wants and needs met. Because at the end of the day, people are pretty complicated. So we're all, and we often make the mistake of thinking, well, if it works for me, it should work for somebody else. So a profile allows us And when we do a profile, we wind up doing about a 23-page report. So we break it down, as I said, wants, needs, how to motivate, how to communicate and how not to communicate, and so on. But then you take it and you start to use it. And the way I would think of it is, if you're going to do sorry, I don't know if that came from the screen. If you're going to do if you have a new patient, you're going to do a diagnostic first before you come up with a treatment plan.
Right.
So think of this as part of the diagnostic. When you're hiring people, this is going to help you decide if they're going to fit.
Mm-hmm.
Because a couple things I can tell you about a profile, it's not judgmental. There's no right or wrong profile. You are who you are. The other thing, it doesn't measure skills. But what it can tell, or education, but what it absolutely can tell us is that person going to fit. So why do things break down? There's no identifiable culture. So again, it's about connectivity. It's about relationships.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that I've personally gone through a behavioral profile with you, and doing a DISC assessment. And honestly, it was so funny. I remember you were sitting down over coffee and you were kind of going through my profile, and my jaw was just dropped the whole time. And it was kind of cool, but kind of scary, where I'm like, how does Ken know me that well? Like, I don't even know why I act that way, or that thought process, or, oh, that makes so much sense. And, I know when I shared it with my husband, it was like, it was a lot of that. Yeah.
I actually get that a lot when I've done some men, and they say, "Can I show this to my wife?" See, I told her. But it is frighteningly accurate. But as to your point, is most people don't really do a deep dive internally. And once we think we know who we are, we seem to measure everybody against ourselves. And that leads to one of the biggest disconnects. And again, it goes back to, well, I like to do it this way, therefore you must like to do it this way.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and often a profile will tell us somebody who may appear to be procrastinating, but they're not. What it's telling us is that profile needs more information.
Yep.
Or somebody that always looks like they're trying to be slightly antagonistic, like, why can't we do it this way? Why can't we do it that way? And the truth is, it's the way their profile is. They're just looking for different ways to do it without, upsetting you, but they can't help themselves. Because remember, your profile, your behavior is pretty much been ingrained in you since your mid-teens.
Yep. So why don't we give the audience here a little insight on some, why don't you do like a little profile on me right now?
All right. So as I said, DISC is
real and honest here.
Okay.
We're rolling it out there on the World Wide Web.
All right. So DISC, as I said, is an acronym. D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for compliance. And really simply, high D people, you got to cut to the chase. High I people, they need to be around people to be energized. High S people are about information and relationships. And high C people are about order. They need order in their life. They need things to be correct. So when we did Samantha's profile, we found out she was a high S, which means she likes information and relationships. A high I, which means she likes people. Low D, which means she's conflict averse. So all of you out there, don't take advantage of her. The thing to note about a low D, though, is you can push them for a while, but when pushback comes, you don't want to be around because it's going to be messy. And I believe you were a low C, right, which means you're going to look for different ways to do things.
Yes.
But the nice thing about a high S, low C is you're going to look for different ways to do things based on information, not just change for the sake of change.
Right.
So there's a real simple, what normally would take about an hour to break it all down. But so now start applying that to the people you work for, the people you work with.
Right.
Start to think about a situation where if I had known they needed more information, we may not have gotten into that conflict.
Right.
Now, apply it to your patients. Apply it to a patient when they're checking in, when they're checking out. What are their wants and needs? Because it's really about understanding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's so true. And like you said, once you start having that background information, it really can help in so many different ways. Like I'm just thinking right now about, a patient who we may say like, man, what a jerk. But that person just doesn't, isn't into short, talk conversations. They want the information and they want
Yes,
it to be able to make a decision. So if you're talking
absolutely.
about my weekend or,
Hmm.
a vacation plans, they're going to get frustrated
Yep.
because they just want to cut to the chase. Right. So it
Yep.
definitely changes the dynamic and how you approach them. And then same way, I know we kind of highlighted this a little bit in the workplace, but why don't we just kind of dive a little bit more into that and how we can utilize that when it comes to our language and our conversations and just those connections, and then again just supporting one another.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have your team, and let's say we've profiled them, two things will happen. What we like to do is then bring everybody together and share everybody's profiles. And really, there's one of my favorite times is when we get that now I know why we don't get along moment. But it's actually done in a positive way because the two profiles are there and we've gone through it. But from that point forward, we can change the conversation. And by changing the conversation positively, we can change the whole culture of a practice. So that's really what we want to do is, and here's the thing, I have to be very clear, we're not asking anybody to change their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a call to, oh, you are a high D, I want you to be a low D.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back to it. What we're saying, accept that they're not you. That's really what this is about. But you're not them, they're not you. So find a common ground, come to a shared outcome, which is one of my favorite phrases. But this will help you change the way you communicate. Just change the whole dynamic. So back to the high D, if any of you are owners out there and you're watching, we've encountered this where somebody purchased a practice and they were a low D, which means they were a little more team-centric. And when I met with them, they thought they suddenly had to be overly aggressive because now they were an owner.
Yeah.
And they weren't comfortable. And then they were surrounded by a staff that where I was like, what's going on here? So again, understand yourself is the first step to understanding others. And that's what a profiling is all about. And the other thing to be clear, we're measuring how you behave, Samantha, not why.
Mm-hmm.
Not why. But that and some of the other tools we have, we actually can measure the level of engagement of your staff. We can measure the level of stress of your staff, all through assessing them. And the other one we can do is if you've done a profile, we can do one called driving forces, which will help us understand why are you a high D?
Mm-hmm.
Or a high I, whatever the case might be. It's like I said about the diagnostic, the more information you have in these very difficult, changing times, you're going to make better decisions if you have this information. And also, if you're using for recruitment, it's a great tool because it should verify the person that you met is actually the person that you interviewed. Because sometimes people fudge a little bit at an interview, just a
Sometimes.
little bit.
Yeah.
Sometimes. Because
So
as Samantha said, it is incredibly accurate.
yeah. So I definitely want to keep talking a little bit more about how to utilize this when it comes to the recruitment side. And my question to you is, I know you mentioned that not everybody is us, and we can't gauge how somebody should act or what they should be doing based off of how we do things in our world. So should
Agreed.
we continue just to hire more people like our personality type or that match our disc profile?
No, because what happens then is you wind up cookie cutting. You wind up hiring the same person over and over and over again, and they're you. What you want to do is establish what is fit. Remember, think of a shoebox. There's a lot of different things that can fit in a shoebox, but there's so many things that don't fit in, they fit on the outside. So when you're doing a profile, but understand yours. And then part of our engagement in Stream is we can help you understand who's going to work best with you, who's going to make you nuts, but most importantly, why. It's not just a random throwaway. So no, you're not going to keep hiring yourself over and over and over. And the way I like to think of it, let's say you've hired all the same RDAs and you bring in somebody new, they're going to keep getting trained possibly on a bit of a bad model. Or if you've inherited a staff, when I say inherit, because you've purchased a practice. So wouldn't you want to know who you're going to be working with?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, they were hired on a different model by a different owner.
Yeah.
And we have found usually about 10% that there will be a disconnect. And not because of anything other than it's just not compatible. So wouldn't you rather know that on day one of your practice than,
Mm-hmm.
about 60 days in going, oh my God, I'm pulling out my hair. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So I know there was a lot of information that we went over right now, but what would you say would be some of the biggest takeaways that practice owners can apply right now when it comes to their existing team? And then the second question, if you well, remember this, if I can try and remember this part, is how to utilize this if practice owners are hiring right now?
Well, the first part is communication is connecting, and communication is key. It is the one thing that really doesn't cost any money. And communication is really a transference of understanding. Communication is also listening.
Mm-hmm.
We all have different listening styles, which we won't go into. So if they're recruiting, my suggestion was first help us let you understand yourself. And then as you recruit, plus interviews, reference checks, all those kind of things, if you were to profile somebody, I culture shortlist, you're not going to profile everybody that applies. That'd be silly. But if you can't decide, maybe you're down to 2 really good candidates, run them through a profile, which we'd be really happy to help you with.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can assess it with you and say, okay, based on you, and more importantly, based on the other people they're going to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, they're only with you part of the time, but they work with each other most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's not just finding the best person for you, which is why I called it the fit,
Mm-hmm.
which I know we work with a lot of. What's the culture? How do we do things around here? And then we can make sure they are going to fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know we've had so much success when we're doing recruitment for practices to be able to utilize this to really help them, like you said, find the right fit. But this is also going to help with the longevity and in helping practices really reach their goals. And I know, for example, a few that come off the top of my head have been specifically with office managers, because that is a
Yes,
very key player. And that person, like you said, is going to be leading the rest of the team. And they're probably going to be working with the team a little bit more than, maybe the owner will be. So,
right.
this is it. That person could either make your culture or could break it very, very fast. And then you have a lot of damage control to
Well,
to go back and fix, right? That's probably 3 to 6 months before you can really repair that.
I mean, think about it is you don't show up. I mean, one of the things about dental care is prevention.
Yeah.
They do ask us to floss, they do ask us to brush, and so on. Those are preventive things to have a better checkup. Well, what we're suggesting is not much different. These
Mm-hmm.
are preventive steps to make sure that you have a happy, safe feelings, a positive culture, staff feels safe, because then you're not worried about recruitment, you're going to have
Yeah.
great retention.
Yeah.
And here's the other part of this, that it will reflect on your patients. Patients pick up the vibe when there's disconnects.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
again, to be clear, we're not asking people to change.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking to just understand that everybody's not the same and use it to their advantage,
Yep.
is the
Well,
way I would think of it.
we've got Sherry here who's watching live. Thanks for joining us, Sherry. She said profiling is so important, especially in bringing your team together and understanding one another.
Right.
Well said. Yeah.
And again, that's why, not to sound presumptuous, but that's why a team session, when it's all done, is a really good part of it. It also shows your team as an owner that you're investing in their well-being, which just, I know we have a couple of minutes, but we're talking about the mental well-being of people right now. Think
Mm-hmm.
about it. If you could eliminate the stress of people not getting along, and not getting along for a reason that we could identify. Because one of the things about low Ds, Samantha, they will tend to internalize.
Yeah.
They will retreat. And then the owner might think everything is fine, but it's not. And then suddenly somebody walks out the door and so on. Figure, what happened here?
Yeah.
Okay, so remember, brush and floss, sort of same analogy.
No, it's very true. And, I know well, like we talked about, low D. So if there's a situation that happens or I'm very conflict averse, even if I am upset, I will internalize it. And
Yes.
before then when it comes out when it's too late. And
Yeah.
probably can really damage, some relationships. So it's like you said, I think it's really important to first understand who you are as
Yes.
a leader,
Right.
then being able to understand our team. And like you said, just understanding one another, doing some team profiles. And that's like an amazing bonding experience. I
Yes.
love doing that with you. It's so much fun for team members to just have that aha moment, right? When they're just like, that makes sense. So, and then all of a sudden, now they remember that if I need to communicate to somebody else that I know that they're a C, that I need to be very detailed because I'm going to give the information that I feel I need to trigger myself to move forward. But that's not the same
Now,
information that person needs.
can I share one story?
Yeah.
There was a practice I was working with. You remember 2019? It
Yeah.
was kind of, it was, so we did a lot of work over, it was a general practice, and profiled everybody. I did 2 team sessions with them. One was after we completed the profiles. And then I went back 6 months later to see what they had actually been doing about it, because it's if you don't work at it, and it does take work, falls by the wayside. I got a call from them in June when
Mm-hmm.
people started going back, and they said, thank you, because all the stuff we worked on in those workshops, when we reopened, we hit the ground running because we had no stress.
Yeah.
We knew how to talk to each other. We knew how to move it along. And I was very flattered that they did that. But it's available to everybody if they, and I'll tell you, they worked hard at it, because I dropped into the practice a few times. They would always remind you, remember when you told us you can't say this? I said, okay.
That's awesome.
So
That's awesome.
yeah, but it's available to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I said, different times, different set of resources, different decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And our goal at Stream is to help you make them confidently.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we've got another comment here before we jump off. Isabel. Hello, Isabel. I think it's so necessary for practices to do a DISC assessment. This will benefit them in understanding how each person communicates and understands. I think that's a very key message, is the understanding part,
Yes.
not only just of ourselves, one another, our patients, but it's just going to provide a safe space to be able to support one another. Well, I think with that, let's wrap that up there. But if there's any, if you guys are looking for some more information when it comes to behavioral profiling, in those engagement or stress reports or driving forces, if you guys want any more of information about how to utilize these amazing resources that Ken provides here with Stream Dental HR, please reach out to us. Also, a reminder that we do have a webinar coming up at the end of this month about how to prepare for this second wave that we are upon right now. So I'll also link that up in the notes down here, so in that way you guys can attend that. But thank you so much, Ken, for joining us
Thank
today
you.
and giving us some great takeaways on how to be able to help understand our behavior, connect with others, and let everyone connect together to create a positive and safe workplace. Thanks for joining
Thanks,
us.
Samantha. Thanks for having me.